everywhere, and I really appreciate you.
That's the way I was raised. I'm sure you were too. To reach out and to be with people, and I think that really matters. And what goes on at UCLA is just me working with the group to get the information, but we're not confused about the issues today. And I really hope we can get into a lot of them, because the reason that I'm so busy is that there's so many people who are so sad, so upset, outraged daily about some of the things that are going on that we thought we had accomplished and, set aside and made clear. And I think people are beginning to realize that racism and white superiority are never going away.
Wow. You really believe that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, it's interesting that you're seeing this. I don't know if that's in your practice or if just in your students or everywhere.
People the students are, disenfranchised because of the way in which the UCLA has handled the Israeli-Palestinian issue. And whether they have freedom of speech, like they thought they did. Faculty are upset because many people are targeting young professors, trying to make them feel as if they've said the wrong thing or they're doing the wrong things, and trying to get them fired, essentially, if they're people of color. There are just so many, on so many levels, issues and events that are making people think, well, what have we accomplished if it's so easy to upend and overturn? And it's a good question.
Yeah, I think I try to think of things in cycles, and, we were just having a whole conversation about focusing on what you want, not what you don't want, but not being a Pollyanna and walking in front of a car. Surely you've seen these cycles before.
Yes. But, my question today is not just how do you get it? Because I think we know as a people how to get what we want. If we just stick to it, focus, stick together, be very articulate, be very energetic and passionate about what it is we want. The question today is, how do you keep it?
Yeah. How do you keep it? Mm-hmm. Right, because otherwise you're in this Sisyphus situation where you're rolling the rock up the hill and it comes back down on you and rolling it up the hill.
Yeah.
Although 3 steps forward, 2 steps back is still progress. It's not.
But it's tiring.
It's tiring, yeah.
And some young people today are not able to do what we did, Dominique. They don't have the vision. They don't have the clarity about who they are, which is very concerning. They're not really sure what it means to be an African-descended person in America. And why in the world are we here if nobody really wants us? I see that so differently, but it is something that young people need to be clear about why we're here. What is our purpose? Are we just rebel rousers and people who like to have a good time? People would love to think that's all we are, but we're so much more than that. We have created a carpet of freedom and an opportunity in this world for people who never thought they had a chance. Most people in the world look like us. That's the delightful thing and the frightening thing for white people.
Yeah.
But delightful thing for people of color, that you can look up and actually see yourself doing something way beyond what you thought you could do. And it's motivating and it's energizing. But, some folks are beginning to wonder, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do that. It's too much, costs too much. I have to save too long. I'm in financial trouble as it is. I can't even get an education and get a loan. The things that were easier years ago are not so easy today, all over again.
It's interesting because, I'm the mom of a Gen Z person.
Guy. Yeah.
19 now. But I guess maybe because my son is an activist or has an activist mindset, my perception of young people is that they're less compromising. And maybe it's because the young people I meet are the ones involved with causes, whether it be Black Lives Matter or whatever. I see that they are in some ways more informed than we are.
Some are.
Yeah.
And you're fortunate enough to have raised someone who didn't really have a choice but to be informed, Dominique. Yeah, some people don't take some people don't take these issues home and talk about them over the dinner table. Some people don't even have dinner at a dinner table anymore. It's a fast food kind of a situation. And that means we have to get back to those things, because that is where you can share not only what you've learned about your history, but also what you've learned about being tired and being so frustrated, putting it down for one night, and but picking it up in the morning.
Yeah.
This is a new day. And like you're saying, there are lots of folks, you have to surround yourself with people who think like you do, not who are people who are going to question you. And that's a struggle. It's not easy.
Mad Dog Media TV says, who doesn't want me in the United States? That's weird to say. Isn't it obvious? I mean, you look at the way that the laws and the policing of those laws is executed. I think it's obvious who doesn't want you. Kwamel says, nobody wants us. Do we want each other?
That's a good question. And we should, because we are a we people. We don't function well by ourselves. And those poor souls who actually thought in this last political election that they should vote for themselves, for their own wealth, for what it is they wanted, were so misguided and misinformed. We are we people. We do better when we help somebody else just as well as helping ourselves. Going alone does not work for us. It hasn't ever worked for us. And you just have to know that there are ways to overcome the barriers, just like there were before. We can do it again. We just have to get rested up and get refocused and re-energized. And that's not with drugs or alcohol or, partying. It is with just sitting down, getting rest, eating well, being healthy, being able and willing to do this fight every day.
Lest you are unfamiliar with the work of Dr. Gail Wyatt, she's not a conservative telling you don't party. In fact, she's a certified sex therapist. And I believe you were the first person of color to ever be a certified sex therapist.
Well, not so much sex therapist, but a psychologist in the state of California.
Really?
Yeah.
In the whole state?
In the whole state.
That
Nobody
is
had
wild.
passed that test. And I was determined, and I did. And then I held little classes where I would teach other Black psychologists who wanted to pass the licensing exam. That's the stopper. There's always a stopper in every profession.
Right.
And that was the stopper. And I used to teach them how I studied to get them ready for passing it. And so the doors opened at that point. But it was pretty weird to be alone and to know how many people needed help and how few people there were who were really trained to understand our lived experience and add that to what we know about psychology.
And starting, you've said before that for you, a lot of it started with the stereotyping and vilification of Black women.
Yes, you have to know what people think about you. And it was really shocking to see that what I heard when I was a little girl was really kind of like a standard for what people still believe, and they still do, Dominique. Those stereotypes of the permissive and irresponsible Black woman who will have sex anywhere, anytime, anyhow, with anyone are still existing, palpable today.
And how do you think that, I mean, it's pretty basic, but we know how it affects the way the world reacts to us, the adultification of children, the over-sexualization of us, the constant underestimating of us. But how do you think it affects our own view of ourselves and our own behavior towards one another?
Look at some of the beautiful but misinformed entertainers that we see today who are Black men or women. Most of the women are highly sexualized, and they are still unable to put on clothes that just look good on them but don't have to show them everything. And that's so sad to think that people actually think they are more attractive if there's no secret about their body whatsoever. You can see it all. Why would it be a secret? Why would you want to know any more when it's right there in front of you? The beauty of sexuality and the beauty of attracting another person is that you leave an impression on them. Wonder what he or she is all about. I wonder if I knew more, would I know more about who they really are inside that maybe they didn't talk about when I first met them. leaving a mystery in a person's mind is one of the most attractive features of why my husband is sitting in the car waiting for me right now. I couldn't believe anybody would say, "Hey, baby," on a college campus, riding in his car. And I just thought, that is so inappropriate and brash. And I wondered, who is this guy, you know?
And 55 years later, y'all are still married? Wow. Dr. Gail. Okay, he shot a shot and it worked.
It worked.
Dr. Gail Wyatt is my guest author and psychologist, and we have a lot to talk about. We did a part 1 on Diddy and all of the crazy things that came out of that around homophobia and anti-eroticism and double standards around Black people and our sexual well-being. And we'll talk about some of that when we continue on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
The revolution will not be televised.
What's up? It is Killer Mike, also known as Michael Render, and I'm encouraging you to listen to more, not less, of Truth Time with Dr. Cornel West and Senator Nina Turner on KBLA Talk 1580.
Sherry Shepherd here to talk about Black health. You know what I love about us? Everything. From science to the arts, we are leading the way. But we are falling behind in getting vaccinated. Pneumococcal vaccination rates are lower among Black adults than white adults. If you're 50 or older, you're at a greater risk of getting pneumococcal pneumonia. And the CDC recommends vaccination. If you're 19 or older with diabetes like me, you're also at increased risk. Let's continue owning our own healthcare and leading the way in vaccination rates too. Learn more and schedule at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Downy Rinse and Refresh. Break up with stinky clothes.
Rinse it out.
Every now and then I get a little bit tired of the stinks that just will never come out.
Going down in a rinse change.
Every now and then I rinse it out. One wash and it delivers. One wash, it smells so clean. Downy Rinse and Refresh, it's a dream.
Downy Rinse and Refresh. Fights odor in just one wash. Guaranteed.
Stories are power. The Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project is an effort to collect, preserve, and amplify stories of Black land loss. It will form an invaluable resource for scholars, authors, historians, educators, storytellers, policymakers, and change agents who wrestle with issues of restitution, reparations, racial inequality in home ownership, and the racial wealth gap. Through documenting stories of Black land loss, the archive will help demonstrate the magnitude of what Black families have lost and will continue the national dialogue to encourage paths to restitution, rebuilding, and healing. Support the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project by visiting www.blacklandlost.org or by donating at www.blacklandlost.org/donate. Spread the word to inspire awareness, activism, leadership, and change. And join us in making a lasting impact. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
So glad you're here with us. So glad the YouTube chat is robust. Dr. Gail Wyatt is my guest, and you're getting a lot of love in this chat. We talk about, we started this conversation, some months ago, talking about Diddy and the situation with him being arrested and all of the accusations against him. And one of the reasons that we decided to do a follow-up was not because of the accusations of violence, which we covered in depth on that show. And if you missed it, the podcast is available for free wherever you get your podcast. But because of this other undercurrent, which was sort of the demonizing of his freakishness, of, that like being a freak is somehow illegal, or or his bisexuality, or the implications, even the fact that these federal agents would come out and talk about the baby oil. It's almost like they were not trying the criminal charges in the court of public opinion, but the sort of moral judgment of him as a man and his sexuality.
Yeah, and it confirmed the stereotype we've been talking about, that black people are irresponsible, overly permissive, no rules, no morals. You know, it said that, well, not only black women, but black men have an agenda when it comes to their success. Here was someone who was clearly successful. He pulled himself up, and he made his career by his hard work, his talent, also the connections that he developed along the way. He made friends with people. So he was a person who could be trusted by someone.
Right. And who did launch a lot of people's careers. A lot of people's careers. But I guess, well, Artist Moore is saying in the chat, what about Hugh Hefner? Why are we, comparing Diddy to Playboy? That should be what the lawyers are fighting about. But my point wasn't, and I think where we left it wasn't so much to argue those charges. But when we talk about these kinds of cases, to be clear where the lines are. I mean, you talked a lot last time you were here about consent and what consent looks like in today's age. And we've had endless conversations about the Me Too movement. But the other side of that coin is that people do have a right to express themselves sexually, right?
They do, under the circumstances that everybody knows what is going on. When you deal with people under the age of 18,
right,
at least legally, they're too young to make decisions about what they want to do with their bodies, or what they want to do with their careers, for that matter. And it's just inappropriate, and it's illegal.
Right, which is why they say under 18, minors cannot consent to sex or anything like that.
But I would argue that until you're about 25 or 26, you really have to be very careful about the decisions you make about your sexuality as well. Our brains simply are not fully developed until that age. And if you drink, and if you drug, and if you've been in the war, and you're suffering from traumatic brain injury, your ability to make those decisions will be further compromised by what you've done to your body and your brain. So when we look at folks who had everything in the world that we think a person would want, and then we see some kind of behavior that I'm considering deviant, because he was dealing with underage minors, people who were unconscious, people who had been using drugs or alcohol. And under those circumstances, people can't make decisions about what it is they are being asked to do, or what it is they're finding out is being done to them when they wake up. It's just under a circumstance, it doesn't sound like it was consensual at all.
Mad Dog Media TV says these Democrats are funny style. Wasn't that Cosby and Me Too stuff their movement? And I challenge that, Mad Dog Media TV. To me, attacking minors and raping women shouldn't be a partisan issue. Why is that a Democrat or a Republican issue? Right. I would think pedophilia and the fight against it would be a bipartisan issue. No. I'm just saying. And particularly, but maybe not, because we may never see the Jeffrey Epstein files. But that wasn't where we were going with this. I mean, I think that we, contrary to the stereotype, we as black people in reality can be kind of prudish.
Oh, very much so. I think in an effort for our parents to raise upstanding boys and girls and who were going to grow into men and women, they thought that by not talking about sex and by going to church and, really reinforcing in the home that there were rules and boundaries and things that you shouldn't talk about and certainly shouldn't do, they were going to raise young, responsible people. And for many people that worked. But let me tell you, for the majority of people, it did not. It created curiosity, because what you don't know, you usually want to know when you're young. And it's the curiosity that leads people to first intercourse. In my research, the number one reason why young women around 13, 14, 15 had sex for the first time was everybody was talking about it and they wanted to see what it was like. Well, that's like buying a piece of candy you haven't had before. It isn't like something that could have long-term effects on your body, give you a disease that can't be cured, or even make you pregnant. And then here you're in the responsibility of a child raising a child. So these are these are difficult issues for parents because many times they didn't get the information. So sometimes we educate parents along with their kids, not in the same groups, but individually. So parents can talk about their experience without revealing more to their children that they want to. But also parents many times have had abusive, violent experiences themselves, and they are least likely to talk about it, to educate their children.
Wow. So what you're sharing with me is that parents who have been abused or parents that have been subjected to trauma, not going all the way back to our enslavement, but in recent history, are less likely to share that with their children?
Less likely. Yes. And unfortunately, with help from a professional, they actually could share that information, and they need to share that information. But you don't start off with someone who you're just beginning to talk to saying, look, you better watch out because somebody will take you, honey, and rape you and this and that. And that. It frightens children. You have to start off very slowly and begin talking about the fact that we don't even have the words to describe what some of the parts of the body mean. So what do you call this and what do you call that? Looking at a chart of a naked body, not a pornographic chart, but a technical chart that really identifies accurately parts of the body and what you call them, and that's where the education begins. It's a neutral experience. It's not to threaten, not to shock, and certainly not to frighten a person. And many people who've had abusive experiences have never talked about it, so when it comes up, they just spill over with all of the bad experiences that they have had in an effort to try to educate, but what they're doing is frightening their children.
Wow. So if I've had a traumatic experience and I don't talk about it with my kids, does that mean it's infiltrating my communication with them around sex or in ways that I might not be aware of?
You may not even be aware of, and you don't intend to harm them or frighten them. You may think that by not talking about it, they won't know, but they'll know. They'll know just by the fact that the way you treat them when they come in late. If it's a huge argument, instead of you're not going to be able to go out this coming weekend. You're going to be grounded, or I'm taking this amount out of your allowance. It becomes a battle, and it's always a battle when it comes to sex. And what you're doing essentially is pushing the conversation out of the normal discourse from parent to child. What we want to do is welcome questions. How was your day? Who said some kind of joke that had to do with sex or the body or anything like that? Anything that's going on, I really want to hear about it. I want to know, what kind of things do you guys talk about? I used to learn more about my children in the carpool when it was my turn to drive. The kids would be in the back seat, and for some strange reason, Dominique, they would be talking about what somebody did or said, and I was sitting right there.
Yeah, I remember those carpool conversations. As long as you got a carpool kid back there, they forget mama's there. You learn so many things. Hoppy Floppy says, no, my kids won't know what I don't tell them. LMAO. Okay, well, we've got news, traffic, and sports right here, Hoppy Floppy, but I think you're Delulu. We'll continue the conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney has called for a snap election on April 28 to address U.S. trade war issues. Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau, seeks a strong mandate to respond to Trump's tariffs and economic threats. Pope Francis, 88, returned to the Vatican after being released from the hospital. He made his first public appearance in over 5 weeks, waving and thanking crowds from a balcony at Rome's Gemelli Hospital. This week in business, Monday is quiet for economic reports. However, Tuesday features consumer confidence, new home sales, and the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. Thursday brings the second GDP revision, weekly jobless claims, and pending home sales numbers. And Disney's Snow White topped the box office with $43 million in its debut. Black Bag followed with $4.4 million, and Captain America: Brave New World starring Anthony Mackie took third with $4.3 million. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The UCLA women's basketball team is moving on to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. UCLA, the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, beat Richmond Sunday night 84-67. 30 points and 14 rebounds for Bruins center Lauren Betts. The Bruins will play Mississippi, the number 5 seed, Friday night in Spokane, Washington. Juju Watkins and USC, the number 1 seed in Regional 4, are back in action tonight. USC plays Mississippi at 7 p.m. at the Galen Center. You can catch the game live on ESPN. The Clippers' 5-game winning streak ended Sunday night at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. They lost to Oklahoma City 103-101. Kawhi Leonard missed a jumper at the buzzer that would have sent the game into overtime. Clippers coach Ty Lue is back on the job. He had missed the last 6 games with back spasms. The Lakers start a 4-game road trip tonight in Orlando. The Lakers are 3-6 since March 6. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
They say the hardest part of getting something done is getting started. Well, we did that 30 years ago when California first took on the tobacco industry. Now, smoking is down 60%, lung cancer 42%. A couple of our cities have already ended tobacco sales. A California without big tobacco isn't just possible, it's already happening. See our progress at undo.org.
KBLA Talk 1580 is pleased to announce that, like George and Wheezy,
We're moving on now.
earlier this year, we were named as semifinalists for the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025. Wait for it. Wait for it.
You ready?
KBLA Talk 1580 was recently selected as one of 10 finalists being considered for this prestigious award. Hundreds of organizations, institutions, and even cities were nominated in the selection process. But KBLA Talk 1580 has made it to the finals. You're invited to watch live on Wednesday, April 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, as Eco America announces the winner and the runner-up, awarding over $200,000 in prize money. To watch live, just go to ecoamerica.org to register and attend the online ceremony. That's ecoamerica.org. Don't miss the presentation of the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025, Wednesday, April 16th, and wish us luck. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black. At Exquisite Family Mortuary, we know how overwhelming it can be planning a meaningful farewell for your loved one. Secure your peace of mind by calling Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. From traditional funeral services to memorials to direct cremation, pre-needs, and more. Call Charlotte White at Exquisite Family Mortuary for Southern hospitality in Southern California. That's Charlotte White at 323-577-5562. Exquisite Family Mortuary is located nearby in Inglewood, California. Exquisite Family Mortuary, where your loved one becomes our loved one. We knew you'd stick around. This is LA's home for progressive talk radio. Welcome back to KBLA Talk 1580.
Dr. Gail Wyatt is my guest. She is a psychologist, an author, a researcher, and really a pioneer in trauma-informed care. We started off talking about Diddy because that's when we promised to do a part 2. And there's a lot of conversation in the chat, which is touching on some of the issues that came up, because you were talking about how we speak to our children, how we inform them without scaring them. Don't try to hide things from them. Folks think they're hiding things from them. And you're saying it will leak out in other ways.
Their behavior will say otherwise.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Bad Dog TV is saying that we're defending Diddy. I I was defending his right to be sexually expressive, to be a freak, to be bisexual, to be whatever in consensual situations. I wasn't defending the crime. But I want us to make that distinction because I think that we as Black people tend to be a little prudish, a little judgy, or a lot judgy. And that it's important to make the distinction between the criminality and the sexuality. Those are two separate things, right?
Absolutely. But they got blurred for him. And they tend to get blurred for people who have a lot of power and a lot of money, a lot of control over other people. And it's very interesting. I mean, obviously, this is not the only person that we're talking about.
Right.
There are many other very well-noted leaders around the world who have the same history. The same history is seen in any number of people who are now representing people in the United States, in our Congress, in the Trump administration. Lots of guys that have been accused of sexual assault. And it's really interesting. You know, why would a certain personality be selected to lead? And I guess people are drawn to certain people who have a sense of control, or they think they have a sense of control. But what we don't look at is, do they also couple violence with that sense of control? You can be very forthright in what you think and believe and very persuasive, but you don't have to use violence to get people to do what it is you want them to do. But all the people in this administration have been accused of some kind of sexual violence, not just assault, as well as the president.
Is sexual violence really sexual, or is it really violence?
It's violence, and sex is the means by which the violence is expressed, because that's the most vulnerable part of a person's persona.
Right.
That's where you would expect your body to not be able to tolerate a lot of harm, bruising, tears, and cuts, and yet that's what people find when violent acts are used on them or expressed on them, that their bodies don't they're surprised that their bodies don't handle it well. Our bodies aren't meant, and especially a woman's body is not meant to be what we call manhandled, handled in such a way that without the respect and the tenderness that's needed to respect a woman's body and not to hurt a woman. The best sex in the world is very tender and gentle, not this what you see on television, this wham bam, thank you ma'am kind of situation.
Throw someone against the wall. But I mean, if people like that, is that? I guess the question is, part of the reason I asked that about violence versus sex is because I always hear people say something like, "Oh, well, he could get sex anywhere. Why would he rape someone?" Yeah. And so my impression, and and we also know there's a thing called rough sex, and so. Where are the lines?
Well, I don't think people have the education to know what rough sex should be. If it's rough, meaning that a person is handling you quickly with a lot of force and that you know how to handle your body, you're not being thrown and tossed around. You actually know how to handle and you're ready to buff off what you don't want to handle. Fine, if that's what you want to do and you understand what it is you're getting into. You should also have a safe word so that if it does get too much for you, you can say the word. Stop isn't apparently enough, but if you say banana and the person understands a banana means stop, I can't handle anymore, fine. If that's what you want to do. Just understand those are the kinds of experiences that many times people cannot forget because it really is more than they can handle. But I'm not saying that doesn't happen. If you want to enjoy your body and enjoy someone else's body, it doesn't have to be rough at all. What I'm saying is people don't know how to have tender, gentle feelings and touch. First of all, that begin your sex life. You're not hurting anybody. They're guiding you to what it is that they like touched and how they like it touched. That's a completely different sexual experience. First of all, it's not spontaneous, it's planned. everybody's protected, so there's no negative health consequence that's going to come out of it. The place is planned so that you're not ending up someplace you don't know, or that you can't get away if you find banana is not enough to stop somebody, that you actually can get your keys to your car, and get out of there. There are lots of things that I teach people to do to protect themselves. And if you don't know and you just see someone and they're cute or good looking, you've had a drink or two, or you're a little high from drugs, can you really make a good decision about where you should be, what you should say, what kind of behaviors are appropriate? I don't think so. It's very rare. And if you do, that's what you probably do professionally.
Dr. Gail Wyatt throwing shade. Dr. Wyatt, are we in a period now in our society where things have gotten so over the top that we can't get the genie back in the bottle? What am I talking about? And, you know, I know every generation probably says this, so I'm very mindful of the fact that we get what I call selective amnesia. We don't remember the freaky, wild, or whatever stuff we did when we were younger, so we want to point the finger at the new generations. But now you have OnlyFans. You know, you can pretty much take away the mystery of just about anybody. A lot of folks are addicted to porn now. Porn has become very accessible on any electronic device. Is that changing sex and sexuality forever? Is that?
It really sadly is, yes. Because you don't see the counter to OnlyFans, and you don't see the counter to porn. What you do see is this performance that people are just loving what they're doing. It doesn't bother them. It feels good all the time, anywhere, anyhow. Come on. It's not real. But unfortunately, most of the young men I see, regardless of ethnicity, have been educated about sex through porn. So they actually think that a woman wants to have sex with them. Let's just talk about something controversial like anal sex, where someone's putting a penis in your bottom, your rectum. Where do you go to the bathroom? I'm using all kind of terms so everybody will know what I'm talking about. That's a very, very touchy subject, because a lot of people feel that if they don't participate in that kind of behavior, that they're not hip, that you don't really care for the person, you're not really trusting of them. No, you're not trusting of them, and you are hip because you ask questions about what it is exactly you've got in mind. This is an examination, and I know I sound technical, but the way you get out of a first experience feeling good about yourself, and when you know exactly what you want, you know exactly how you want it, and where you need to be to feel safe. And if that happens, you may look at the person and say, wow, they really cared about me. They listened. They did what I needed to have happen. And so I'm willing to now do perhaps what they'd like to have happen, or I want to take tiny baby steps and to get there anyway. But you see, it takes a lot more time, a lot more thought, a lot more practice to get to a sexual negotiation. You see, that's what this is we're talking about today.
Yeah. Well, you said a lot of young men are educated about sex through porn, which educate was a generous word, right? Because I hear from women now that men are suddenly trying to do stupid things that they probably saw on a porn movie, in a porn tape, that are not sexy at all, that are actually kind of turn-offs or
scary. Yeah. And they should say no. These things should be talked about before you take your clothes off and get into a strange situation. You need to know exactly. This is something you talk about, not over dinner.
Not over dinner.
No, you're talking about if you want to have sex with me. What does that what does that entail? What are you talking about?
But that seems so unsexy.
Well, it's a negotiation, isn't it? You know exactly what's going to happen. You both agree to it. Some people even sign something to say
and whatnot. Yeah.
And then you have sex. Now, the way it's performed, can be more sexy. But right now I'm saying we don't do the paper pencil kind of let's talk about it and break it down. If you're going to have somebody build a house, you don't say, hey, build me a house, do you? No. You sit down and you break it down into its integral parts to make sure you understand. This is how we can finally get around women saying, I didn't know what he meant. I wasn't aware. I had been drinking. I was unconscious. This is what we hear on the college campuses. And I know any parent would be concerned if they knew that their kids had been pampered all those years to go to a great school and then end up in a relationship situation where they were taken advantage of because they didn't take the time to study sex like they study their books.
Dr. Gail Wyatt is our guest. We're going to get smarter around here. That's what we're doing. I'm Dominique DiPrima for KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at the gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Los Angeles Regional Food Bank is on a mission to fight hunger and provide nutritious food to those in need across our community. They partner with federal, state, and local programs advocating for better policies and funding for critical hunger relief programs like Cal Fresh, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. The food bank works with coalitions and local representatives to make sure hunger is addressed in every district of LA County. They also run nutrition education campaigns, raise hunger awareness, and source nutritious food for distribution, all while supporting regulations that allow food pantries to operate safely. Want to help? Visit lafoodbank.org or call 323-234-3030 to volunteer or find a food bank near you. Together, we can ensure that no one goes hungry in Los Angeles County. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. The Live Your Life organization mentors young women, helping them break negative mindsets and see beyond their surroundings. Through career exposure and hands-on training, they're encouraged to think big, stay focused, and make positive choices. Founded by Nikisha Mama Boo Smith, who transformed her life to become a community leader. Live Your Life is changing lives, but they need your help. They're raising funds to keep their new building open and expand their programs. Your donations will support food, clothes, hygiene products, and holiday giveaways. Visit liveyourlife32.com. That's LIVEYOLIFE32.com to help today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Dr. Gail Wyatt is my guest. You can find her work at Semel, which is semel.ucla.edu, semel.ucla.edu, or you could just go order Stolen Women or one of her other 6 books and get yourself a little bit more sophisticated. Attorney Dion Raymond, my colleague, says great enlightened conversation. Morris Phillips says girl talk, maybe, but it's not. It shouldn't just be girl talk, right? No. It should be everybody talk.
Absolutely. I'm seeing more men, young men, below the age of 30 in sex therapy. I would never see a young man in therapy. What therapy does a young man need? Healthy, what have you. Raised on porn, having erectile dysfunction, which means they're not able to maintain an erection long enough to enter a woman's vagina and to experience pleasure for themselves or to help her to experience pleasure. Before the age of 30, that's unheard of. But they're so misinformed and they're so nervous and anxious about performing. This whole business of the stud has worked on both sides of the street, so to speak. It can be a great thing for you to brag about, but on the other hand, it's a lot of performance pressure. And performance pressure creates anxiety, which just is an antidote for erectile dysfunction. You shouldn't put too much pressure on yourself. You should understand that men have to learn how to be good partners. And if you do talk to your partner and plan out what you want to do, you're more likely not to put too much pressure on yourself. If you can't keep an erection, you need to go to the doctor and make sure that you don't have some health issues that maybe you're not even aware of, even though you may be very young. Men are abused too, and those kinds of experiences can get in their way. Sometimes men are abused by older women who overwhelm them sexually by their bodies being bigger than they are. They may be children. And though they can get an erection, it doesn't mean they understand what to do with a body that's usually twice the size of theirs and with a lot of weight on top of them. Can create all kind of problems. So we have to allow that if we're going to raise children, we have to see their whole bodies and their whole lives in front of us. And we want to protect them everywhere. We don't want them to be taken advantage of. And we don't want them to be the last person to know if they are unhealthy and they need to do and to take things that are going to change their lives and their sexual functioning.
How is porn addiction causing erectile dysfunction?
Well, people think that you can just look at somebody who doesn't have any clothes on and get an erection. Some people don't. That's not sexy for them. What's sexy for you, you got to find out. And it's not always the same thing that a porn movie might prescribe for you. The type of looking person may be different. The things that they say may be too crass for you. Mm-hmm. Some of those women talk like they've been out on a ship somewhere for 10 months, and they don't know the intrigue. We started off talking about not knowing something, the mystique about a woman, the mystique about a man, not showing everything. And making it so public is something that is a turnoff for many men. It overwhelms them that women have such large breasts and large behinds that they can't even manage that body. And
that sounds wild. But I'm thinking about it because I have a friend, a young person who experienced that. Mm-hmm. And it sounds counterintuitive. And I thought, well, is it because he's self-pleasuring too much to the point where he can no longer function, or is he numbing himself out? Or
well, you did raise a good point. Self-pleasure or masturbation, you can call it either one, puts you in a wonderful cycle so that you end up really not needing another person. If you don't have a partner, if you don't want a partner, if you're nervous and you just want to go to sleep and just feel more peaceful inside, some people pleasure themselves before they fall asleep. It can work against you again, where you that kind of arousal can be much faster than if you were with a person, because you're giving yourself the arousal. You're touching yourself quickly, more and more quickly, which brings your sexual arousal up to the point where you're ready for an orgasm, if you're lucky. And if you're with a person, you can't just be focused on yourself. You've got to also look to see, well, is that person yawning over here, or is that person actually involved and moving up that trajectory like I am? So we end up somewhere close to each other in terms of what we're going to experience. So it's more complicated. And if you haven't had that experience in a long time, or you've not had it at all, some people would just rather masturbate or self-pleasure.
Right, but in the context, and you're saying there's nothing wrong with that. Physiologically, psychologically,
Nope.
it's fine.
We are born
Enjoy.
to have sex. There's nothing we can do about it. And much as people want to spiritualize it away, we are born with a sex drive. Just like we're born with a need for water. You got to drink water. You got to take care of your sexual needs. Now, you can take care of them yourself, or you can look in this world for a partner at some point. But the fact that you know how to pleasure yourself, I feel, is a gift. And it's the reason why women have a clitoris. They don't need a sexual partner. Let me say that again. They don't need a sexual partner. And we're the only one of the two genders, if you're talking about men and women, that have this mechanism of being able to pleasure themselves. It's amazing.
Well, men can pleasure themselves.
Yes, but it's a lot more complicated. They also urinate. From that same mechanism.
A lot more complicated.
Whereas the clitoris just sits there in its own little throne, and it doesn't really do anything else. It's amazing, isn't it?
You had one job, clitoris. You had one job.
Now, don't fail me.
So, Dr. Wyatt, coming from a baseline that's healthy, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because I've always had this theory: we need food, water, shelter,
and sex.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm sorry, to me that seems real basic, but I feel like because of maybe religious programming or shame or trauma or whatever,
right,
we've gotten away from that, and we look at sex as something bad or other, rather than part of sort of like your basic. You need touch too. I mean, even non-sexual touch, right?
Yes, but that can lead you to a warmth and comfortable feeling, or that you're yucky. It's a yucky feeling, and it's not comfortable at all. But it can lead you into realizing that people are born to be with people. If everything works out.
If everything works out. And we certainly don't have time for this, but that would also seem to say that the over addiction to porn, the incel kind of movement of these involuntarily celibate, mostly men, that these are alarming developments.
Yes, I'm troubled by them because they don't work. There's usually there's a group at UCLA that are asexual. They consider they haven't decided whether they're males or females. They haven't decided what kind of sex they want to have, and are all celibate. They asked me to be their sponsor, and I said no. I said everybody ought, and they were furious with me and wrote it up. Here's a sex therapist who won't be our mentor. And I said, absolutely not. Everyone needs to make a decision here about who you are. And a part of who you are is your sexuality. You need to get comfortable with it. You need to know what you need to do to be safe and to be a good partner to someone else, or just to be a good partner to yourself. But that's part of growing up. And to put it off, okay, some people don't want to think like that right now. Maybe they've had an unfortunate experience. That makes sense. But to put that off forever means at some point, you might act on it impulsively, hurt yourself or somebody else, and there's no need for that.
Wow. Time flies when you're on the show, Dr. Gail Wyatt. I still have a list of 300 questions that we won't get to.
It's such a joy talking to you.
Yes, I suggest you get Dr. Wyatt's book. You can check in at semel.ucla.edu to learn more. And anything you want to say before you head out the door?
I'm just so grateful that you have an open mind to want to educate and inform your audience.
And myself.
And yourself. And when I say these things, I'm really talking to myself. My parents were wonderful teachers. My mother was the granddaughter of a Methodist minister, but she used to leave books at home. So she couldn't talk about it very well, but she required us to read and to talk to each other. That was more than most Black parents do.
It's a start. Do what you got to do. Dr. Gail Wyatt, thank you so much. And thank you for being Women's History Month. Not just celebrating it, but being it. I want to leave you with an Audre Lorde quote. She says, "I am deliberate and afraid of nothing."
Oh, I love that.
I think that's going to be my theme this next 4 years.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, I am deliberate and afraid of nothing. Tavis Smiley's up next. He's got a great show on deck for you. Like my mama used to say, history is now, and we are making it together. Until tomorrow, I'll see you on the social media. Until tomorrow, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Blaise. Justin Trudeau seeks a strong mandate to respond to Trump's tariffs and economic threats. Pope Francis, 88, returned to the Vatican